that at the beginning we should have a very quick round of answers. And the way you are seated from starting with any side, please tell us. We have been talking about the problems Ukraine is facing, but what is good? What are the success stories of Ukraine in the media field? I would just ask you to comment on this, to focus on the progress, on the success stories. What have we managed to do well in the media field? You're very much welcome. Yaroslav, maybe you will start. Yaroslav seems not to be hearing me, but I hope that you have heard the question. Just a quick comment. Well, in spite of the martial law, we do have a competitive media environment that allows us not to be controlled. I know that there are people who want to control the information flows, but anyway, Ukrainian consumers of information do get the required information of high quality from the sources they want to get information from. The only exception here is, as Zoya has rightfully mentioned, is the news deserts. Yes, but focus on the good things. And in general, we are facing a problem because we are not accustomed to talking about success stories, because bad things will be within the next question. Please don't break my scenario. Yes, just in brief. Under martial law, we still have a sufficient competitive media environment as compared to other countries that used to be at war. Thank you. Hi. Thank you. Well, I'm sorry if I have some tautology in my speech because my command of Ukrainian is not that fluent. I'm a consultant of the media, and one of our line of activities is sustainability of media. We work in many countries, and some of them belong to the post-Soviet space. So I have a lot of countries to compare. So starting with 1991, and Ukraine, well, of course I will mention wartime, but I agree that since 1991 Ukraine has managed to build the independent media sector in spite of all the barriers, in spite of all the pressure coming from oligarchs and political circles. And I would say that watchdog journalism or investigative journalism is a good example of the best ones, not just in the region, but also globally. That is often mentioned at different conferences dedicated to investigative journalism. And it all started not with the war or not even with the Revolution of Dignity. I think that it was in times of Gaigiziz that it was launched, and it's becoming better and better. So this is the precondition for this competitive media environment. Thank you, Oksana. Three things I would like to mention. First of all, we've got high quality media. We've got human capital in place, and I really admire my colleagues who, even in very difficult circumstances, still follow ethical professional standards. And also we do have the neuron connections in our brains that enable us to feel comfortable even in the toughest times, even in the toughest circumstances. Even in such circumstances, we are not talking about survival, but we are talking about development, which is really precious. Thank you, Olga. I think that it was for the first time during the full-scale invasion that the message about Ukraine was heard in the world for the first time in Ukrainian voice, not through Russian narratives. And of course, we need to point it out for ourselves as a progress. Thank you, Olga. Gillian?
I'm going to speak in English. I think there's a lot of great things about the Ukrainian media sphere. I agree completely with what all of the other colleagues have said. I think you have had a very successful reform of the public service broadcaster in this country, which is extremely rare. You have very good affiliates all around the country, and you have strong regional media as well as strong national media that have been building their reputations over many years. You have very strong investigative reporting teams all around the country, not just national level groups, but also regional, local, hyper-local groups that have the skills and motivation to keep local government accountable and transparent. And I think that that is really a treasure to have in any country. Many countries would be envious of the number of qualified and really brave and brilliant reporters that you have working around the country. And lastly, I would say that you have a really strong civil society network that does various things that strengthens the operating environment for the media, so that you have very strong media watchdogs in this country. I can't think of a European country that has the kind of media watchdogs that are as effective as the ones that you have in Ukraine, that are doing the Whitelist Institute of Mass Information. We also have the joint map of recommended media. I think these are excellent tools. And also Media Ruch, the solidarity of civil society organizations with media that want to uphold standards means that when the government oversteps, the industry and civil society around it really steps up and defends it and is successful in defending it. And that's something to be proud of as well.
I would just like to mention that we will be discussing all those issues from the point of view of their influence on the resilience, because the topic of our conference is resilience. How do we ensure it at different levels and in different fields? And the topic of our panel is focusing on the resilience in the media environment. So I think that we should focus on this resilience. How do we keep it up? And my first question now will be for Olgha Myrovych from Lviv Media Forum. Olgha, as far as I understand, you're now focusing on working with foreign media, and you have even reformatted your forum. You have probably changed your vision. So could you please explain why are you focusing on this line of activity and what results have you already got in this work? Thank you for the question. It's a really important question that will help you highlight something that quite often is not mentioned and is related to our activities. So let me start with one story. Media Forum, as the organization, was founded in 2013 by the communications team for Euro 2012. And it was created because we saw how important it is when a large number of foreign and local journalists come to a certain city. We saw this effect and we wanted to have it as a long-lasting effect. That's why the mission was to create the platform for the interaction of Ukrainian and foreign journalists. And our mission was also initially to take care of foreign journalists, for them to be able to really review some information for themselves about Ukraine besides the information that they can see from newspaper columns. We were implementing our mission in a number of ways. We brought groups of foreign media men to our local environments where we have reforms, where we have support of societal changes. So we were trying to enable those foreign groups of reporters to immerse into our reality. With a full-scale invasion, we just started working more intensively in the direction that we had already been working. And as well, to tell the truth, I'm not quite sure that it's true that we are now working more with foreign media men. We are working for the sake of Ukrainian media, which are ready to have a dialogue on the par with their foreign colleagues. For us to survive, we need solidarity from the civilized world. I don't believe in solidarity which is based on just empathy or sympathy, but I do believe in solidarity that is interest-based. And for us to be interesting for the world, we need to be interested in others. That's why we are now trying to make those media men from Ukraine who are capable of running a dialogue with the world to have the resource and to have this window of opportunity. Thank you, Olga. Now let me invite Guy Geldiev. You have already shared some information on what you do. I also know that you work successfully with the monetization of Ukrainian national and local media, and I think that you could give some comments regarding the changes in the media market of Ukraine over the period of the full-scale invasion. Please share your views of where the media have been restructured and what do they need to develop further. So tell about the changes in the media market in the background of the full-scale invasion. Thank you for your question. I've just had a look at some of my notes and some of the figures, but if you allow me, I will start with a short insight into the times before the full-scale invasion for us to see the difference. The independent media segment, which I will focus on all the time because the independent market, the media market of Ukraine is really diverse. And most of this market was under the control of the oligarchs or of the state. And some share of this market was also subsidized by private entities, foreign partners. But the independent segment is just one segment of this media market of Ukraine. And normally it existed at the expense of advertising costs. And in 2021, we had the peak of advertising budget. It was $1.3 billion or something like that. So it was actually more than 3 billion hryvnias, and it fell by 68% in the first year of the full-scale invasion, but then it rose and rose again, and now we have the best year according to our observations, and well, it's going to be about $638 million. But that is the income, and we still have the costs. Let's not forget that after the beginning of the war, the cost did not go down, just vice versa, because the media got additional expenditure items they did not lay the budget for. It was security and safety of journalists, as well as power banks and different equipment that they needed. And Oksana has already mentioned today that human capital is something that really matters in the media environment. It's true, but hundreds of media men were conscripted, some of them left Ukraine, and the fight for Ukrainian journalists was launched by the international media working here. It was the war for talents, the fight for talents. That's why the costs rose, and there was also inflation that added up to that. So the cost side rose, the income side went down. It was partially reimbursed thanks to international assistance, which was unprecedented. Even before the war, Ukraine was number 2 in the world after Sri Lanka, according to OECD data. Among the recipients of philanthropic assistance. It was about $11 to $14 million a year. And judging by what we see, shall we have the same levels of support? Probably yes, but for long? No, probably not. We think that this international support will not be on the rise, it will be falling down, and the market of advertising is expanding, but not at a high pace. And we think, according to our data, that in the nearest 3 years, the independent media segment will get about, this is about 493 media. I'm mentioning here the national and local and regional ones. So we will have for them about 45 million this year and about 51 million next year. Half of that amount will be covered by the instruments that we have, but there will also be an amount of money that will need to be spent on the media for them to keep their survival. And that's an open-ended question. Where from do we get the money for covering their activity? But let's not go into detail. And here is my last remark. Will all the money be a priority for independent media? Because, war came and we have learned to work with security issues. We have got power banks and Starlinks, but most of the questions related to the resilience of media will be related to money and economics. Well, thank you. So far we are okay with the timing, so I think that it would be logical to give the floor to Oksana, because I saw that she wanted to react to your words. So, Oksana, Romaniuk, in connection to what Guy said, probably you're going to have a dialogue, or maybe it's going to be just your monologue. Please tell us what is happening to our regional media. It's important to understand what the picture with regional media is and how resilient is this media sector. Maybe you have some data about what is happening to media in the occupied territories. I wonder if you could comment on some of those things. Thank you. I hope the mic is working. Yes, you don't have to press anything. I think that the figure mentioned by Hai, is underestimated about 3 times, because according to our figures, what we now have is energy or security equipment, but we have it only for 60% of regional media. And that is an ongoing process, the process of conscription and mobilization. We do have challenges because we need to have new staff members and they need to be trained. So I would be talking not just about the basic survival budget, but I would also be talking about the budget we need to keep going with our transformation. We need to be flexible. That is the requirement of the time, and otherwise we will not survive. Conservation is something that we don't need. We need development. And of course, we need to fund public broadcast, social broadcast. This year it has been funded only by 35%. We hope that more will come next year, but that's what we've got. And the public broadcast is the resource of high quality information that covers all the territories of Ukraine, but for the occupied ones. Why is it important to get access to high quality information? Just to make your brain working, because you see, Trump has already been elected. You can see what is happening to people who don't have proper education, proper background. They don't have access to high quality information because they don't have the resources for getting those information pieces and for processing them. And then there are some threats coming. There is some turbulence that definitely affects all the countries later. As far as the news desert are concerned, there can be deserts and there can be marshes. Deserts are something that we have now in the occupied territories because mobile connection is blocked there. People there are disoriented. They don't have the information, and I think that even when we unblock those territories, the society there will be marginalized. They will still be in the captivity of those strange ideas affected by disinformation. And well, there are some channels of information provision to those areas, but mainly that is on Telegram. Media cannot reach those people. That is just Telegrams and some Vkontakte or Odnoklassniki, which is the only way of reaching those people in the occupied territories. But reporters cannot go there. I hope that you have heard that 30 civil journalists are now in captivity. They've been, since 2014, 112 journalists have already been in captivity. And so this is the desert. And what about this marsh? That is when we have got a lot of information, but it's poor quality information. Here are some bubbles, here is some strange smell, and you're just immersing into it because you don't know where you could find this high quality information. you're drowning in this marsh. Well, in Friday we published a map of high quality media, and we are happy that Varos, high quality Zakarpattia media outlet, has been included into that map. But according to the Interviews network poll, regional media have the top level of trust. And if local authorities want to give some information that needs to be trusted, or if local businesses want to give some information to media, they need to go to regional media. Because, it's about our Ukrainian mindset. We trust our neighbors, we trust our communities, and regional media are included into this community. We trust those regional media, even if it seems to us that, well, that is a strange story, but our mindset gives us a prompt showing that we need to trust. I am now reading the book of Marina Starodub about the mindsets of Ukrainians. It's a very interesting book showing how different we are from our Western partners. We are supposed to exceed the EU. I hope that we will manage to do it. We don't have any other way out. But we need to understand what steps we have to take, taking into account our mindset and our specificity. So I'm urging all of you to be looking for the islands of high quality media in those marshes. Get to them, invest into them. That could be even 20 hryvnias once a month. Well, that's already something. Read those regional media. Do support the regional media. And I've also recalled one more thread Guy failed to mention. This is the verticalization of communication at the national level. That's what we saw in all the regions. Everybody reported on the victory plan, had some meetings. Well, I'm sorry, but that was the practice of the Soviet times. Um, they were just taking the vector of 5-year periods. They were running for the communist future, and it seems to me that somebody even reported how many letters to what regions they wrote, commenting on the president's victory plan. Well, it's something abnormal. That is too much verticalized. There is some communication that should take place locally. You have to communicate with local communities. You have engaged local media in that. I can see that there is more and more tacit silence on the part of regional communicators, on the part of the ministry. Communication is being narrowed down to some 5 or 6 managers. If you're keeping silent, you don't exist. Oksana, but you have moved to a different direction. Yes, I'm just talking about threads. I just want to say that this verticalization and the whole strange story around it kills trust and creates the news desert, but on the other side of the state communications, this marsh, you mean? Okay, it would be logical that I now give the floor to Gillian McCormack, because yesterday you presented this large survey. Internews USA survey the Ukrainian media, the attitude and trust in 2024. So what about trust in Ukrainian media in the 3rd year of the full-scale war?
I'm afraid it's not great news when it comes to trust in media in the 3rd year of the full-scale Russian invasion. We saw a decline in trust overall across the board to most sources of information, with the exception, like Oksana was just saying, of people we know. So Ukrainians tend to trust family and friends as sources of information. Then very high, up until recently, was trust in information that came from the armed forces of Ukraine and the Ministry of Defense. But I think they also need to take a look at themselves. It's still 60%, but that's 20% less than last year. So it's a significant drop. Trust in media declined to around 50% only. Also, trust in the office of the president as a source of information, in national government websites and other agencies, in local government. All of these showed a steep decline. And it's also revealed when we ask people, what do you think about the coverage of the war? Do you trust it? And we can see that there's a decline over time in trust in reporting on the war and reporting from media in general. The only exceptions with regard to trust are, as Oksana pointed out, in particular, regional, digital and digital media, online media, newspapers and radio. So people have a higher tendency to trust regional than national media at the moment. So that's a problem. I think that this has to do with the way that the media work with official sources of information, and in general kind of fatigue, also a disconnect between what people are hearing from their friends and family who are fighting at the front or who are involved in defending Ukraine and what they see on their screens. We see also that there's a decline of trust in the United News telethon. Now only about 37% of Ukrainians say that they trust the information that comes from that source. So I think that this is definitely worth looking at. It's a failure of communication and the quality of information. What people say in focus groups about that is that they feel that the information they're seeing is too managed, too controlled by the government. And Ukrainians don't like that. They want to see, more accurate sources of information. And we asked people also from who are serving in the armed forces what they think of media at the moment. And one thing that I want to point out is that people living in occupied territories and people who are fighting at the front line, in particular, rely on Telegram channels as a source of information. And Telegram is, somebody described it once as a great big toxic soup, right? There's some good information in there, some good channels, but there's a lot of really terrible channels as well. So reliance on Telegram, which is high in this country, over 73% of people say that's the main way they get news and information is through Telegram. So these are all challenges that I think need to be faced up to in the next 6 months to a year.
I would like probably for us to have a message box. We have been talking about solidarity that should be based not on pettiness but on balancing our media market. We have been discussing the issue of trust to regional media. We have been talking about verticalization of media when media perform certain orders, and now we see the unprecedented rate of reduced trust to the Telegram channels. We have among our panelists Yaroslav Yurchyshyn. I wanted you to be the last intentionally and because you represent the authorities. Considering all these issues, it is understandable that media won't be able to survive if we do not have good information policy on the part of the state. I'm talking about policy, not control. So what steps should be taken at the level of the state? Could you please just mention them? 1, 2, 3. Well, it's more about explanation. It's more about rendering feedback also from the media. Because, well, it is only the mature authorities that are ready for this, because there is an illusion that in post-information society it is possible to control the information policy. Well, it is possible to have reporting on a certain event, but what is definitely impossible is to form the information field in the way you see it. So we have to have strategic communication. The second point, we have to enhance competitiveness, and there may be different formats here. First of all, we have a reduction of oligarch influence on media. Let's remember what we had in the TV channel Inter before the full-scale invasion and what we have now, so the difference is there. From the viewpoint of information security, well, we should think about it. Should we give support to big media or small media, regional media? Yes. Well, yes, we should apply competitive approaches, and, well, in principle here we can also form good and proper policy, and then we should see why we use such amount of money and what is the efficiency behind this money. And when I was appointed as the head of the committee in December 2023, I immediately stated that the United Marathon is not effective, and I did what should be done. I actually went to the accounting chamber of Ukraine, to the state audit service of Ukraine. The accounting chamber said we are not going to check anything, we are very busy. The state audit service did their inspection, and the state audit service has written that when the films are funded about a man who was trying to hide from women for 25 years, it is hardly can be considered as an effective investment into information policy. So it is really important for us to use effectively the money we have and to invest the money into something that is really effective, that really works. Whether we should fund the development of Suspilne, of public broadcaster. Yes. Now we have an issue with the boundary of regulation. We cannot regulate it in a classical point of view, but at the same time, now the social media is the main sources of information for people. There are different approaches in this respect. Canada is trying to ban the TikTok. Well, with us, we have had a long discussion, and when we started the discussion, the popularity of one of social media, where there are 70% of population, so this popularity is really important for all the politicians, and if you are trying to fight it, definitely it will work against you, and all the politicians understand it. So, people are emotionally exhausted. People do not have time and do not have willingness to verify information. So, how should we create requests for critical thinking, for media literacy, at least for the active part of the society? This is also another challenge the state has to address. And, well, there is a mechanism for this, and this is an effective mechanism. And this is cooperation with our public activists in different areas. We have been talking about, well, intelligence journalism, and this is probably one of the optimal mechanisms to stimulate adequate reforms. So media literacy, media filter, wide list of media, and here my gratitude goes to the Institute of the Media Information. Well, nothing for the journalists without journalists should be the basic principle of any democratic power that believes in liberal values. So there are lots of things to be done, but I would like to be positive at the end. When there is an attack on a journalist, or when journalist activity is prevented, is hampered in Ukraine, the moment we know this information, there should be a criminal case initiated, and it takes 1 week. In Poland, for example, in order to initiate a criminal case regarding the attack on our journalists, we had to spend lots of time and efforts. We had to engage the consul and the public activists, but at least we do have these results. Well, we should definitely ensure that the guilty people are punished, and the practice shows that if the journalist is criticizing the minister and the minister is actually criticizing the journalist, the final point is that the minister is resigning. I would like to cite you the words when you gave 1 year ago, when you provided comments about the freedom of expression of Ukraine. Gillian has demonstrated that there is unprecedented rate of trust in all the areas, even to the servicemen, let alone the United Marathon. And you said that Ukraine should bring back those channels that have been switched off at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. And there should be broadcasts of the parliament sessions. Are there any steps taken in this respect? So I want you, as the lawmaker, as the person who is the head of one of the most important committees, well, if we are thinking about the development of the country, and it's not only about just recording something and fixation something, but development. So what about the opposition TV channels and the broadcasting of the Verkhovna Rada sessions? Well, opposition channels, the situation is really sad. There are some court cases pending, and we see the desire of the system not to accelerate these things, but there is no other alternative but to bring it back, because well, we have to explain these things to our international partners, and this is one of the fundamental chapters in the negotiation. And well, now we have to a chance to bring them back independently, or these issues will just be included into some facility plans and will look like children who were punished and then stopped their disobedient behavior. Another point is, so again, to become mature, to become adults, and not to wait for somebody to come to Ukraine and tell us what to do. For example, the way it was with the Istanbul Convention. You have to adopt the Istanbul Convention and combat domestic violence. Well, we actually needed it ourselves, but there was external pressure on us to do it. So the priority of our activities is seen by the number of people in our committee. For example, I have the smallest committee in terms of size, and people are not willing to join our team. For example, my predecessor is now under arrest, and well, there are grounds for this. Talking about the United Marathon. Nobody is going to tell us, change the format. The question will be, why aren't there opposition politicians and independent experts? First of all, there was the opinion on the Commission on Democracy, and they said that's wrong. Now it's already included into the report of the European Commission. And well, if we don't do anything next time, they will tell us, well, you have given money to public broadcaster, but it's not enough. Bring the opposition channels back or provide arguments why you cannot do it. And please balance the United Marathon with something else, or just dismiss it. And then introduce a more competitive approach to providing information. If the channels do not meet certain requirements or indicators, you have all the regulating measures, and well, if they do not work, you just withdraw the license. So no arguments, for example, regarding security, presence of our journalists or something. Well, we have sent the request to the National Police, to the Security Service of Ukraine. There are some single cases which do not demonstrate the system. And the system shows that, well, actually the journalists themselves say, let's improve the order on information coverage. The journalists come to regional and military administration and say, let's agree how we can go to the civilian infrastructure sites. So we want to operate on the basis of the standards. So the journalists themselves are constructive and very reliable partners in terms of changing the situation. But somehow the authorities see journalists as their rivals, their competitors. Why it's like this? Well, it's the question about being mature, being adult. Again, there are no options but do it. It's a pity that we are not doing it independently, but we are doing it under pressure. And the motivation is if we don't do it, we won't be allowed to enter the EU. Just one statement, because we have to meet the timeline. What happens when we do not have strategic approach to communication? We have the following. According to the Office of the European Union in Ukraine survey, the total audience of 3 opposition channels and the total audience of the marathon channels is identical. Well, there is some percentage in the opposition channels and in the United Marathon. But marathon leads to polarization of the society. Just imagine an elderly lady is watching the marathon, then she goes to another channel, and the information is totally different, 100% different. And well, Zelensky is our savior, and Zelensky is our actually a person to blame. So definitely it was not a reasonable decision to throw these channels away from the marathon. Marathon is like a bag without a handle because it really undermines trust to the public institutions and to media. Zoya was right. We have to have public broadcast of the parliamentary sessions, because when we have Zelensky in the parliament, we have open air broadcast. But at the same time, we do not have any other broadcast of the parliament sessions. So I really want to see not only Zelensky, but also Honcharenko and many others. Thank you, Oksana. Hi, please. Yaroslav has just voiced the point whether the state should provide support to the media. And that was a sort of a trigger for me, because I'm a great fan of the free market. And I think when the state brings some support to the media, independence, innovation disappears. So probably the state should stand aside from the media. Well, give what you have promised to Suspilne, to the public broadcast. Well, Suspilne is not the most undefended channel, and well, the only tool is independent funding of the media. That will be enough. Media is probably one of the best sectors in Ukraine. If something goes wrong, the very media people who are called media watchdogs will just eat those wrongdoers. And therefore, they do not need any support. They're doing what should be done themselves. And the final point. When I started my career, 81 percent was has been in the third channel, and the first point was in social media, and now the situation has totally different, and now we have the active voters, and that's why the state is trying to fight for this audience. But again, the effect probably is a bit exaggerated. Thank you. And now we are going to have a sort of an attraction. So we are going to do the following. There is the so-called Media Resilience Index. We'll see now the result. It has a number of criteria from 0 to 4. I will read the point and please give the marks. There was a person who was supposed to help me. And, well, so Media Resilience Index. It includes freedom of speech from 0 to 4. The speakers didn't know about this exercise. Professional journalism. The third point, diversity of news sources, business management, and activity of additional institutions that influence the resilience of media. So who's ready to put some points here? Hi, probably you start. Freedom of speech. Well, I knew it would be 1.5, 1.7. Here we'll put 3. Professional journalism. Unfortunately, there is no mic. Well, I will give the points. Freedom of speech, 3 points. Professional journalism, 1.5. Diversity of news sources, 2.5. Business management, 1. Activities of additional institutions, complementary institutions, 3 points. Gillian, freedom of speech, professionalism in journalism, diversity of news sources, business management, activity of complementary institutions. All the institutions that influence the media. Donors. Oksana, please. Freedom of speech, 2 points. Professionalism, 2 points. If you are a teacher, diversity of news sources, 3 points here. Business management, 1.5. Complementary institutions, 3 points. Yaroslav, freedom of speech, 3 points. Professionalism, 4 points. Diversity of news sources, business management, and complementary institutions. Well, we cannot divide here into state and non-state. So 3 points here. Well, here. And again, now we have to count the number of points. And this is the final blitz question. Well, these are not speeches. Just make a list of issues that we should work in media sector. Olga? Well, probably I put 1.5 to professionalism, and my indicator is the situation how the society perceives itself. And it seems to me the media lack reflection on this. We have a war, and that means we are under attack of our enemy, and we have our internal gaps or problems, and they are not mentioned in the media, but for one of them, this is corruption. And the focus, when we are talking about the corruption, is on the civil servant. And nobody asks, okay, if the civil servant has huge amount of money, who brought this amount of money? And everybody is satisfied. The editorial offices because they have the information, the donors because they have the picture, and the audience because they have the target. But when there is a high quality local edition, publishes an article that, for example, public transportation system lacks drivers because of mobilization, I have a question to the journalist. Because the task of the journalist is to ask how many people actually resigned and how many people went abroad, and probably it is not the mobilization that is to blame. So professionalism and to put questions in a proper way and to depict reality in the way it is and not not in the way you want it to be is about professionalism.
Працювати.
I want to encourage media companies to invest in membership and subscription models. We asked in our annual survey if people are ready to pay something towards their favorite online media, and 20% of Ukrainians say yes, they are ready to pay something, and that is a big untapped market, and it's the best guarantee for your editorial independence is if you get a substantial amount of money from your audience, and those are the people that you work for primarily. So I think it's worth investing in that.
Our greatest task is to make free our city journalists who are in captivity, as well as all the civilians, and to do whatever we can for the Russian authorities and for those people who killed the journalists. For example, Victoria Roshina were held liable, and will address our internal problems here in Ukraine. It's very important for us to consolidate the world and to convince the humanitarian organizations who say we do not have any powers, so we have to make them perform the functions they were created for. L&D, R&D, so навчання і розвиток, інновації, розвиток бізнес, діяльності, три аспекти. Well, the first point, to protect their boundaries and to protect their agency. If you are media, what's your mission? What are your values? Why do you exist? If you exist in order to make money, please leave media environment. You are the fourth power. What is your agency? What are your boundaries? You have to change the world for the better. If, for example, you leave this room, find the media from your region and ask this question to this media. Remember that you have the right to demand something from the authorities, and you have the right to demand something from the journalists. Send requests to them, interact with them, invest into them. Thank you. And we have the calculations. I will tell you what kind of index we had before the full-scale invasion. What was the general number of points? Okay, let's probably still calculate the final figure. 2.62. This is better result because before the full-scale invasion, the result was 1.96. So we have had some changes accelerated by the war, and we have our person who was supposed to make some comments. I will try to sum up, and probably I will voice certain things that have not been mentioned. In my opinion, in order to protect resilience, we have to keep regional journalism. And that means we have to understand where we have the desert and where we have the marshes. The deserts should disappear from the map of our country because we lose competitiveness of the media. And as a result, it leads to radicalization of the society. Zoya has started with the situation in the US, and we already see the results in the US, so we do not want to have anything like this in our country. And first of all, the society has to understand that high-quality information costs money. 24% of the Ukrainians before the full-scale invasion were ready to do this, and this percentage has been growing all the time. It was growing at the beginning of COVID when we were staying at home, and it was important for us to get this information. But there is also a very important research that Ukrainians should know about. Judith Miller, in her research of 2018, said that in those districts where local media disappears, the people pay more money for utilities, and the allocation of money from the local budget is less fair. So that means I paid today 20 hryvnias approximately, but that means that the media will be controlling the authorities. And for example, I'm going to give the example of Odessa. For example, we were leaders regarding the number of TV channels. I understand that people who are here are a bit ironic about TV, but just compare. Before the full-scale invasion, we have had 30 TV channels. Now we have just 2. This is public broadcaster, Suspilne, funded by the state, and 1 local TV channel. And these TV channels we had before were the platforms of opinions. There were leaders of opinions on those channels. Probably not all people were watching them, but they shaped the agenda, and then the media discussed the points raised. So this is the challenge. And in order to ensure our resilience, we have to actually to trace these information deserts in the post-information society. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear participants. Thank you, dear audience, because here we have decision makers in the room. Business should be interested in high-quality media because this is the direct protection of their investments. Thank you.